Hello ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between! Welcome back to the table. My name is Taylor. Now let's talk. Joining us at the table today is an incredibly special guest which I am sure many of you are familiar with, a game made by From Software, a Japanese developer behind the Dark Souls series, and a plethora of other games over the course of decades. The game we'll be looking at today is a Shinobi-based action title released in 2009...
2019? You mean Sekiro? I hate that game.
No, John, not Sekiro. I'm going to be talking about 2009's Ninjablade.
Ninjablade? I've never heard of that. What is it?
Well, that's part of the reason for this series, is to show people games which they might not have heard of or otherwise missed. Back to FromSoft. Normally, I don't focus on the developer of the games because I believe in separating the art from the artist, except for cases like the Slormancer, because of the size of the dev team would have an obvious impact on the production of the game. The reason that I mentioned FromSoft in particular is that they've developed some of my personal favorite games. From the Souls series, which I happily played with the boys, to the solo adventure of Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, which I have platinumed on Steam. Them being the dev team does have an impact on my perception of the game we're here to talk about today. Though the first time I played this game, it was back in 2009 on my Xbox 360, and had no opinion of FromSoft because I didn't know who they were, so I will be combining my thoughts from back then, and the PC playthrough which I did a few years ago. Alright, with the housekeeping out of the way, let's talk about the real guest joining us at the table, the bastard child known as Ninjablade. This is a third-person action game where you play as a modern-day shinobi known as Kenogawa, as part of a specialized task force who are called in to dispatch people infected with a special hookworm that was originally discovered in South Africa, though this game takes place in Tokyo. Now I know that's a lot to take in all at once, but that's really all the story beats that the game gives you outside of a few smaller things that change up here and there. Sadly, there's no hidden lore in this game like in many other FromSoft titles, so you really just kinda have to work with the bare bones there and move on. With your trusty katana and the fabled Ninjablade on your back, you seek to stop the infection and destroy all the carriers before the entire city is nuked back to the Second World War. And of course, having been betrayed by your father and mentor, which happens in the first mission, you are the last hope to stop the infection and keep the city of Tokyo alive. Overall, there are 9 missions where you'll be hunting the infection throughout Tokyo, with each naturally rising in its stakes. These are not open world missions and are all linear experiences. Each mission starts and ends with not just a cutscene, but one of the most glaring features of this game that show its age, exasperated by the scale and pervasiveness, its QuickTime events, or QTEs as they will be called from now on. These QTEs are always introduced with the same clip of zooming in on Ken's eye and a sound effect to let the player know they're about to happen. Thankfully, if you're not a fan of QTEs because we're now in the 2020s, years after they were popular, you can set their difficulty to make them easier to just get through. The nice thing about the QTEs though is that they're the most anime part of this game that you will experience. And they all have Ken doing some of the most ridiculous things you'll see in a lot of FromSoft's game. Beyond the QTEs, the combat of the missions is what you would expect from the genre of this game, especially in the late 2000s, so you'll be fighting a small handful of enemies with a series of weapons, each to fulfill a specific role and work towards the boss of the mission. As you would expect of a game of this age, each of the weapons has a series of different combo moves, but are also necessary against specific enemies to be able to shatter their defenses. The first of the 3 weapons you're given is the Oni Slayer Blade, a pretty standard katana which acts as the balanced weapon that has a good stopping power and a decent swing speed. This will be the main weapon the player uses throughout the missions because of its balanced nature, but it's not the only weapon Ken's able to use, and unfortunately won't help him through every situation. Shortly into the first mission, you will receive the twin Falcon knives, a pair of smaller swords which have blades attached to wires coming from the hilts, meaning that they have an immense reach and can act like a whip or a rope for Ken. These are used to combat smaller and faster enemies, who otherwise would stagger Ken in combat if he tried to fight them with the Oni Slayer Blade. But as a consequence of this fast speed, they do significantly less damage. They can, however, also reflect projectiles back at an attacker. Outside of combat, they are used as sort of a grapple for Ken to help him traverse gaps in buildings and reach new ground. This also means that they're the only means of fighting flying enemies. Finally, you are given the Stone Renderer's Sword, which is a massive greatsword meant to fight against armored and shielded opponents as a means of opening them up for other attacks. This comes from its immense size and power, though at the cost of attack speed, meaning it's only good against large and slow-moving opponents who will give you the 5 years that it takes to build up your swing. It is also especially useful for exploiting weaknesses in walls to either advance further in the mission, or finding hidden secret collectibles in the world to unlock more health, chi, and other goodies. Beyond the swords, you are given a version of an iconic shinobi weapon, a large Shuriken. This version of the Shuriken is able to take on different elemental attributes depending on which colored orb you put inside of it. The 3 main elements you can obtain are wind, fire, and lightning, all with different applications in and outside of combat. There is a secret 4th element for the Shuriken, but it's hidden behind a series of secrets that I will not disclose in this video. You are welcome to Google it, YouTube it, however you want to look it up, or you can find it for yourself. Speaking of secrets, Hidden throughout the world is a series of health and chi pieces, which are meant to increase your health and chi gauges. Chi acting like a mana to use your shurikens and ninja vision, which act like Batman's detective vision to help you find secrets. Additionally, you can find different suits and emblems to change Ken's appearance with these predetermined suits, or by changing the colors of the armor the way you want. And these changes all appear in gameplay and cutscenes, meaning you can run around looking like a Power Ranger if you wanted to. You can also obtain Shinobi emblems, which act like a more traditional collectible, and large amounts of blood crystals, which act like a currency to be able to upgrade your weapons. All of your swords can be leveled 4 times. With each level, they change in appearance and gain a new set of attacks and combos. Though they can all reach level 5, the last level needs to be unlocked through a series of secrets or other actions taken by the player. The shurikens, on the other hand, can only be leveled 3 times and again offer new combos and appearances, though the shuriken upgrades do not affect their use outside of combat in the wider world. Outside of the weapons that I just rambled off, there are on-rail shooter sections where you'll be mounting a machine gun or grenade launcher against multiple types of enemies, usually large animalistic ones that you'll be fighting either in the air or on the road. These all take place either on the side of a helicopter or the back of a truck, and are relics of a bygone era of gaming that don't feel out of place when playing this game, because it's meant to be a piece of history. Alright, let's talk about the reason for upgrading these weapons and these on-rail shooter sections, and the things that FromSoft are known for: the bosses. These are in keeping with the traditions of the dev, often large, monstrous creatures, which will remind you of bosses from the Soul series, and even a boss similar to Quelaag in her design. You will be engaging these bosses multiple times throughout the mission, in smaller fights throughout the mission before the big final battle that caps off the end of the mission. These all come with the expected QTE sections, which will see the boss either escape or run away by some means that allow you to fight them again later. At the end of the final boss encounter, you are presented with the chance to perform a Tadome, which acts like a spectacular finisher to the QTE to kill the boss and end the mission. Once the mission is done, you are scored based on how well you performed in the QTE's regular combat, and what hidden secrets you found to get a ranking from either E to S. Ninjablade is not what I would call a flawed gem, though I would most certainly call it flawed. I experienced a number of bugs in the 2 hours I spent recording footage for this game, but it still stands out as a game I'm glad that I played, both back in the day when it released and when I bought it on PC a few years ago. Outside of being a piece of From Software history, it is one of the most ridiculous games I've ever played, which tries to take itself somewhat seriously. There's a scene where Ken is just standing on the bottom of a plane's wing upside down with his arms crossed for no explainable reason as to how. In a game that takes itself semi-seriously, this is great. This is a game that is unashamed to be anime as hell, and wants the player to feel that power trip without having the magic or power of a god, just that of a skilled shinobi who pulls off some of the most needlessly over-the-top kills that he can. The game takes about 6 or 7 hours for a regular playthrough, but you can extend this by looking for all the secrets and trying to beat it on hard. Yes, it has a difficulty setting. Yes, that is weird for a FromSoft game. It's selling for $10.99 Canadian right now, which I feel is a fair price, but if you're hesitant, grab it on sale and play it when you are in between 2 larger games as a bit of a break. The game does show its age in every way you can think of. For instance, the gameplay you can set at 60 FPS, but you have to change that every time you boot up the game, and the menus are always going to be at 30 FPS, that you can't change. But it's one of those games that I feel you should experience at least once, and then just never play again. I don't think this is a good game in many ways, but I think it's a fun game and a game worth playing nonetheless. With that said, this is where the conversation begins. Let me know your thoughts, comments, and questions about Ninjablade down below. Thank you everyone for joining us at the table once more. I hope you will join me again at the table with our next guest. Thank you so much, and goodbye.